What's up, BSers? This is Jim Fitzpatrick, and I'm not really sure what episode number or date this is going to be anymore, but it's sure to be a good time. Take it away, Brett and Sean.
Welcome to Gaming NBS, a tabletop RPG podcast. I'm your host, one of your hosts, Sean.
And I'm Brett. Welcome to the show. Welcome back, folks. Damn, Sean, you do plan to just kick me to the curb. I'm your host. Just right there. Saw it.
I was right there.
Saw it happen.
I jinxed myself.
You did jinx yourself.
It's all right.
That's okay. How the hell you been, man?
I'm doing all right, man. How are you?
Not bad. Any good gaming in since we talked last year?
Yeah, man. Forbidden Lands strikes again.
So are you running or did you pass the reins off to Harrigan and you're playing now?
I am playing.
So Harrigan's finding out how difficult you are?
He is. Yes.
Yeah,
of course.
I've been there, Harrigan. That's all I can say. And there's probably singing, some weird, inconsistent accents. Yeah, it's difficult, but you'll get through it, Harrigan. It's okay. It's okay. And I'm here for you. If you need a phone call, just let me know.
Yeah.
Anyway, how's the game going?
It's introductory to therapy, I think.
I think so, yeah.
For the most part. It's actually a test. If you can handle me as a player, I think you can handle anyone.
That's true. This is a fair point. Or are you liking the game though? Having fun with it?
Yeah, it's fantastic. Good. I like Forbidden Lands.
Even
as a player. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's fun. Wait until we get to the Bitter Reach when it's ass cold. Ass cold.
That's a level of cold, people. That's bad.
It is. We use it in Wisconsin quite often.
We do indeed.
How are you, Brett? What's going on in the Brett world?
Let's see here. Last time, what the hell did I do last week? Last week was a Warhammer 4th edition fantasy RPG day. My buddy Lenny couldn't make it, got sick to my game, and Alpha's game was at a spot where he's like, hey, if I run mine, Lenny wanted as much to keep blah, 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 blah. So anyway, we negotiated, and he ran. A lot of fun. My Dwarven Slayer's kicking some serious ass. I think I have the system down now where it feels more natural. It was really clunky. I talked about this on Discord a while back, where it was just the cognitive load for me was like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And I think we're past that, or at least I'm past that. Other people, of course, are faster at math than I am, so they got through it quicker, but it took me a bit. But I seem to be grokking it now. And I didn't make any horrible, stupid addition mistakes this last time. That was good.
Bonus, man.
That was pretty good. Tomorrow I have my Wastelands Pathfinder game with the guys. So that should be pretty good. And then Wednesday, I'm playing D&D with my kids. There were second session of that one, so that should be good.
D's and D's.
Yeah.
What happened to Vaesen?
Oh, wrap that up. They had a blast with that.
I see. So what are you running for D's and D's?
I gave the kids, I said, what do you want to do? They said, I want you to make up a world and we want to use these characters types. Like, all right, sure, whatever. We'll make up something. So we're world building on top of story building and everything else, but it's fun. So, and the kids like, Alana is playing a Goliath druid. AJ is, he's got two characters. One is a dwarven paladin, and the other's a gnome thief. And they were kind of expecting like the usual go to the dungeon, do the thing. And then suddenly it was like assassins, and how come the Goliath is supposed to, not Goliath, she's a Furbolg. My bad. She's a Furbolg. Why doesn't the Furbolg is supposed to know this thing? How come she doesn't? And back and forth. So there's some mistaken identity, assassins, as I said, weird artifacts, the stones of the Titans, and other things that they haven't figured out yet. So they're actually really eager to get back to it. So, which is a good sign.
It is a good sign.
One of your players are like, so when are we playing again? That's good to hear. Even when they're your kids, it's still good to hear. It's very good to hear. Other than that, man, I haven't had a lot of made some good progress. Chris Sneezak and I've been back and forth on Avalon stuff, and I've made some good progress on some of the new things I wanted to work on there. Some 5e backgrounds. Chris has been crunching away. on some different pieces and parts there as well. Classwork we've wanted to do. So that's going really well. That's a lot of fun. I think that's about it for now. Nothing else I can think of offhand. You good, man? Anything else?
I did play in this one game, 5th edition, Streets of Arvalon or something, I think it was.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
With,
shit. That was since we last talked, wasn't it?
It was, man.
Oh, my God. I thought that. Wow. I need a calendar, apparently. God damn. Yeah, that was, I ran that for you, Stefan, Dragonspawn, and Craig.
Yeah.
From Third Floor Wars. Man, I thought that was over. Wow. I thought that was pre-last show. Good God. Man, I need a break in a calendar, apparently. That was actually a lot of fun.
It was so memorable. So memorable, Brett.
God, I'm such a douche. Nobody likes me anymore. This is why. No, I'm actually being drummed off the show. That's what's happening.
On, man.
No, it was the cool thing was Craig and Sean have both played with me before and played with me in the Avalon setting before. Stefan hadn't done either. And I thought it was really cool because it felt to me like both you and Craig had a faster grip on certain pieces, like, hey, this is how this kind of works in the setting and so on and so forth, even with the system stuff.
Yeah.
It felt like, but especially the setting. And it felt like everybody made sure there was only 3 players, but everybody was more than happy to pass the spotlight around. You know, when it was Craig could have easily done X. He's like, you know what? I think this would be better suited for Sean's character or for Stefan's character, or instead of the players, I think the 3 of you guys really did a wonderful job doing that.
Ball
that
hogs.
Was really cool. No ball hogs. Not at all.
Sports ball reference. You're welcome.
Sports ball reference. Yeah.
You're welcome, BSers.
Yeah.
No ball.
No look behind the back passes a few times too. It was good stuff. Very good. It was short, violent, but it was had all sorts of goodness to it. So it was a lot of fun. It was fun. Always fun. I cannot think of anything
always
else.
Fun to play with one of my favorite game masters.
Oh, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. I see you talking about Craig. So that's nice of you.
Come on, man.
I know.
I'm not that cruel and crass.
So did I run any other cool games that I'm forgetting that I ran since we talked last?
Not that I'm aware of.
Oh, good grief! Can't believe that. Yeah, I think that's about it then.
Oh, announcements. Want to thank Carl Clare, one word, for the kind review that showed up. I think that was done in like April. Although when I say it was done in April, this is being recorded May 9th. So it's not, April wasn't that far long ago. I lost track of time, Brett. You know, this retirement thing.
Well, between you losing track of that and me not remembering what games I ran and what day I ran them, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
It's a good thing we're getting out while the getting's good. Otherwise, it'll just fall apart.
Yeah.
So, Sean, you've been talking to me about kind of like what's the world like after Gaming BS sunset. So, what are you cooking up something crazy?
I think I got a plan, man.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a plan.
Yeah.
I mentioned it briefly Saturday's stream. So for those of you that don't catch it, Saturday mornings I stream online on YouTube. Just talk about gaming stuff, whatever news and stuff comes up, and typically spurred on by the chat, which helps immensely. And so I have a podcast that I want to get off the ground. And I've mentioned this to Brett, and Brett, maybe I don't know, he might be on it. Not permanently necessarily, but.
Well, the idea that you're talking about is, kind of sourcing from different folks and so forth. And I think it's a really cool idea. Do you want to go into details or do you not want to do that?
No,
yet?
I can mention it. It's GM Mastermind. That's the title of it. So it's kind of a game mastermind. It's a little wordy. Mastermind. It's like Astonishing Swordsman and Sorcerers of Hyperborea. So thanks, Jeff Talanian. GMmastermind.com. I have episode 0 done. It's not in and available through Apple Podcasts yet, but the premise is this. I want to get game masters on the show, either through email, voicemail, a forum or Discord post, maybe even on the show at the same time, 2 to 3 people besides myself. That would be called the mind, if you will. So if you're not familiar with what a mastermind is, the concept is that you get more brains are better than one. So they can come up with different solutions faster. They've all come from different backgrounds and experiences. So they can lend that to the discussion, whatever the topic is. And I'm also looking for folks to suggest topics and what they've either run into as a player, a game master, maybe what's frustrating them. And then, getting a roster of people that belong to the mind to be able to weigh in on that stuff. So that's the goal. Episode 0 is on the website, and it'll eventually make its way to Apple Podcasts where you can listen to it. And I've asked Brett if he would be a part of the mind. And if you are interested, you can go to gmmastermind.com/the mind. Or if you want to do show topic, just go to gmmastermind.com/show topic. And all that is then you're letting me know you're interested, which I also ask about your availability in case you want to be on the show, or maybe you just say, no, I don't want to be on the show, but I'm willing to weigh in. Then I will make a roster, and then when episodes come around, I will hit you up and say, hey, could you be available? Or, hey, can you weigh in on this particular topic? We're going to talk about it in this one episode.
Well,
so that's what I'm dreaming.
Well, the reason I thought that was a cool idea, Sean, when you brought up to me was that, so if somebody wants to say, hey, I'm running Forbidden Lands, X, Y, and Z have come up, struggling with, or whatever, advice, right? Somebody's looking for help or have an idea or a question about a specific system or setting, I would be like, I'm out. I don't, I barely scratch the surface of the books. I'm not the guy to answer that question. Where you, Harrigan, Phil Vecchione, Eileen, somebody else who's playing, and I don't know if Eileen's playing, but anybody who's in that says, ooh, I like it because I think it's almost I think it's taking some of the really cool stuff that we've had through Gaming BS from our listener feedback and making that a little bit more star of the show. I think that's a good idea, man. Because then like if somebody were to say, hey, I'm running, Bookhounds of London Gumshoe game. And, hey, Brett knows Gumshoe. This person knows Gumshoe. And so this other person, and she knows it too. All right. Who's available? Who's got some ideas about this problem? Punt them in there. I think that's pretty cool. We can sourcing not only from game system, but setting and genre concepts and all of those things. So I guess neat, man. It
doesn't have to be game specific. Like Brett mentioned, it can be about anything. And I can get other people to weigh in. So if somebody's like got a problem with Forbidden Lands and they're having a struggle with a particular component of that, that's fine. It doesn't have to be somebody that has Forbidden Lands game mastering experience or rules and mechanics experience, because somebody else that doesn't could come in with a fresh perspective that maybe they've played other games and said, oh, well, let me tell you how in other games, is this even possible? So it's a collective discussion about whatever the topic is. And it doesn't, yes, it might behoove us to have a person or two that knows a little bit about Forbidden Lands, but that shouldn't exclude you, right?
No, yeah. I got it. No, that totally makes sense. Yes, you can. Fair enough.
And
I like it.
By volunteering to be part of the mind, you're just, you're just becoming a pool. I think I'm going to call the people that are invited onto the show or to talk about it the brain trust. That'll kind of separate the two things, right? Like,
there you go.
I want you to be part of the brain trust for this episode where we're going to talk about this topic. You interested? And that way I can get all kinds of people. I can get, podcasters, I can get game masters, I can get streamers, I can get people that just run games all the time. I can get people that do maybe organized play, and they can all weigh in on these different things. So the cast or the hosts will change, ideally, and it'll be herding a little bit of the cats. But I think if I've got a big enough pool, I should it should be relatively easy getting folks on the show to talk about their favorite hobby.
Shouldn't be too hard. Awesome, man.
Brett,
I like the idea.
Brett might be on the inaugural episode. I don't know. I don't want to commit. I'm still talking to his agent, and he's talking about availability and all this. And he's got his, what do they call it?
I got my riders. I got the
riders.
Yeah, I got the riders.
And we'll see if we can work something out.
Yeah. Awesome.
He's renegotiating contracts. Like it's
yes.
just, yeah.
It's I mean you know what? I think if we go any further, we'll have to get the lawyers in the room. So let's just let it go.
That's true. Fair. We should move on, right?
Yeah, let's move on. Shall we random encounter?
We should go to random encounter. Oh my God. All right. Random encounter. Segment of the show where we field emails, voicemails, comments from social media. We've got 2 this week.
All right. I'll start.
You're going to start.
I'll let you go.
I should. Okay. Sounds good.
Okay. Matt comments on last episode on Duet Gaming. Thank you for 380 plus episodes, guys. I've really enjoyed all the banter topics over the years since Misdirected Mark sent me over this way to listen. You've been one of my 2 regular every week podcast features. I was somewhat afraid when you made the announcement earlier, switching to every 2 weeks. It was it was the one sunsetting the show. The timing coincided with my other main podcast going on full hiatus for a major health issue for the showrunner. They're getting back on over the next few months, so big thank you for keeping my podcast input levels up. On the topic of duets, this has been my biggest disconnect between RPGs that claim to emulate or be faithful to Sword and Sorcery, what I'm looking to experience to match my expectation. In so much of SNS fiction, it's often one hero or heroine out adventuring in or against the world. And when it isn't a single hero, it's a hero plus companion with widely different skill sets or powers, not the same quote-unquote level as many parties are. So the classic party-based RPGs don't ever really feel like an SNS adventures or stories to me. Perhaps this is part of why D&D was so associated with Lord of the Rings in public imagination. The start of that story is much more like the party structure presented in many RPGs. Looking for a 2 or 3 player Swords and Sorcery RPG, or possibly a solo one, to get that exceptional hero or hero with a companion feel of SNS. I suspect you or the BSers will have a suggestion in that vein for me to track down. Thanks again for the great content. Looking forward to the last episodes. That's interesting. I'm glad you brought that up, Matt, because you're right. It's a lot like I think we mentioned this Call of Cthulhu, right? And most of Lovecraft stories, it's one person. That's it. Maybe a cast of hangers-on, but it's one person telling the story or whatever the case is. There's a few exceptions. And though very rarely is there a group, the only one I can think of off the top of my head is the Dunwich Horror, where there are actually Professor Armitage, Rice, and losing the third guy. But there are 3 people who are actively taking care of the problem. They found stuff, researched it, and they're going to Morgan Rice. There we go. Professor Rice, Professor Armitage. Anyway, there we go. Those 3 are actively going out to solve the problem. In most cases, it's like one person, Pickman's model, one person talking about this weird ass thing with Pickman, or whatever, or the thing in the doorstep, blah, 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 you name it. And you're right. In a lot of the old school Sword and Sorcery stuff, if you think Conan, it's Conan. Perhaps he has a hanger on or somebody else involved or whatever it is. Now, there are some, I would think that if you wanted to have a 2 or 3 player type, then I would look at things like Fought from the Grey Mauser and start leveraging those components more. And saying, okay, how do I do that type of Sword and Sorcery type of thing. But yeah, there's the other thing that's difficult. We talked about this a little bit, I think, at some point over the last 7.5 years, is the need or desire, or how bad is it to be different levels and different power levels and so forth. And depending what you want to do from a gaming perspective, if you go Osric, it's a first edition AD&D type of game, but the experience point charts are still different, right? When I run first edition AD&D Greyhawk, as I did, I'm going to do again for my group at some point, I use the experience points tracks, right? Thieves level faster, fighters level faster, wizards level slower, clerics are kind of in between. There's different leveling progression. And the crew is fine with that. They're like, yep, that's just how it works. Got to keep adventuring, got to keep digging, got to keep going, and so forth. That might be an answer to you insofar as that different experience point tracks. I know in the in Pathfinder, there's different experience point tracks in a way where they have, it's like their progression level is either slow, normal, or fast. Might be able to leverage something along those lines. But yeah, the other thing I would think, Matt, is that getting into a serious sword and sorcery type of game, whatever the mechanic of choice is, whatever the core rule would be, I think it's going to be important to have people who understand exactly what you mean, right? Because when I say sword and sorcery, I think Conan, Fought from the Grey Mauser, and even Elric and Malebene. Some people would put in there, and some people would tell me, no, it's not because of X, Y, or Z. And because of that, no, it's not. Yes, it is. Back and forth. It would be really, I think your session 0, really making sure people understand what it is that you want to accomplish and how you want to emulate it so that they can show up and help you maintain that tone, because that's a son of a bitch, as we've talked about before. You know, when you get going and you're like, hey, we're going to play this very strict, hardcore, hard-boiled noir detective story, and then somehow along the way it turned into Toon, Who Framed Roger Rabbit. What the fuck happened there? And it's a tone thing. And I think if you do it, have a really solid session 0, as solid as you can, and don't be afraid, in my opinion, you and or the players, acknowledge the fact that we may have to call each other out periodically and say, hey, let's stay on tone. Keep the tone. I learned this phrase from one of my favorite LARPing groups, the Last Hope LARP. I've met those folks from running EverCon and a few other places. If you've ever been to Gamehole Con, they're there quite often. They have a phrase that they use in LARPs. If you start to break the genre and the world, they say decorum. They say that, and everybody goes, oh yeah, sorry, that's the reminder. It's just a single word, decorum. Oh yeah, get back, stop talking about Mountain Dew or whatever. You know, the weird thing I was arguing about was decorum. Oh yeah, sorry, let's get back to where we ought to be. So I think that is that's a handy thing, and it might be worthwhile for some of us to pull that type of thing into games like the sword and sorcery thing Matt's talking about, just to help each other maintain and reinforce as you go. But anyway, Matt, kind of a bunch of vomit for me there, man. I hope that was helpful. Sean, this is a quick aside from a sword and sorcery perspective. Is that a thing that you like? Like if I were to say, hey, it's going to be that Conan style game or something in the early genre of the fiction, is that something you're interested in, or is that not your style?
I don't know, honestly, because I don't think I'm a fan of sword and sorcery like some people are fans of sword and sorcery. So for me, I'm sure I'm going to get hate mail for it. Some would say, like, for me, it's, fantasy is fantasy, but people be like, no, it's not. No, man. It's not the same, dude. It's not. No, hey, breaks. So I would probably have to brush up on my swords and sorcery inspirations, like, whether that's Krull or Beastmaster or John Carter Mars or whatever that looks like, or Elric or something in that space, Conan, that would get me into that headspace versus Tolkien.
Yeah, I would say, honestly, if you feel like it, if you go back to our buddies Jeff and Hoy over at Appendix N Book Club, if you go back to their catalog, they're 118, 120 some episodes in, I think, at this point. Those guys do a really good job covering a lot of the Appendix N stuff, which is all the old school stuff that Gary Gygax listed. And they're stretching it to mean different things in different areas. But a lot of that stuff is the old school sword and sorcery. So I think that would be a good place to go to. And honestly, Sean, that could be a topic for a hopper for your mastermind concept here, is that genre, who plays that genre, a system that works it really well or whatever, because that could easily be a show. And that's a show that having a discussion with different people who understand it and have played and worked in that could be pretty cool.
Ray Otis did a talk at BSRCon on sword and sorcery, and some of the concepts he laid out made sense to me. I'm just not a devourer of fantasy sword and sorcery books. Like, I don't know why. It's been a long time, and I just haven't gotten into Appendix N like those guys, like Hoy and Jeff. I don't know. I don't know why. I haven't read a book in a long time, like a book for that purpose. Like I'm always reading rule books and settings, and I don't know.
I'll tell you, man. I have of all the people I know who devour books, the one person who stands out above the rest is Cthulhu.
Oh man, that guy eats them up.
That man will devour more books in like a week than I can usually get done in a year, type of thing. It's insane.
Very admirable.
I used to be a crazy avid reader, like crank out a book in a day. Like boom, grab one, go. My buddy Lenny suggested this one by Christopher Golden, Road of Bones. He's like, Brett, you're gonna love that. I'm like, oh, that's a short one. I could probably read that in a day. And I thought, who the fuck am I kidding? I don't have time, or I'm not making time.
Right.
You know, one of the other things. So, but anyhow, I think there's back to the sword and sorcery thing. I really think that if Matt, or anytime you're doing a genre thing like that you want to emulate, that session 0 and however you want to call decorum on each other and however you want to make sure that you're maintaining the tone as best possible, that's really going to help.
Yeah.
Absolutely help.
For sure.
Thanks, Matt, for writing in, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt. All right. Another one. Forrest comments. Forrest the Gary comments on Duet Gaming. One of my favorite short campaigns was a one-on-one I ran for a good friend where we played a half-orc fighter assassin and therefore a loner. He was legitimately terrified when I sent 7 dwarves after him. Yes, those 7 dwarves. Except they were incompetent and bent on finding him. Much of the role-playing action was him negotiating with others to try to thwart the dwarves' efforts and pick them off one by one. I'll never forget that little campaign. It lasted a few months of play, 2 sessions at least a week.
One of the things that Forrest calls out there that I think is really interesting, and I believe we hinted at it, but when you're talking about 2 people, it can be a little bit easier to coordinate because there's just 2 of you. You know, if Sean and I said, hey, I'd like to run an Avalon, Streets of Avalon game. Sean, you in? He's like, oh, who's playing? Just you. We're going to do this. Huh. You know, there's stuff you can get done over IM. There's shit you can get done during text, you know, depending how in depth each session needs to or wants to be. But because what I got, I love the part, what Forrest is talking about there sounds like fun. But when he's talking about lasted a few months, 2 sessions at least a week, I'm like, man, I couldn't get my group. Oh, wait, it's one person. Yeah, I could probably make time to talk to one other person every week. A couple times, probably. You know, that's totally doable. Nice. That's good stuff, Forrest. Thanks, man.
Yeah, thanks, Forrest.
Anything else? I think we're
good.
That's
it.
All right, let's roll on.
Let's get into the main topic. What are we talking about this week, Brett?
Well, Mirko, Digital Hobbit, he had bugged us about this a little bit ago about all the starter sets, quick starts coming out. He said, I wonder if this could be a good podcast episode topic, actually, whether it's worth buying the starter sets versus the core books, supplements, or what makes for a good, bad starter kit, etc. And Sean and I have been knocking this one around for a little bit. And we're like, look, this is a good one to throw in kind of at the tail end of the show here. And I think I started thinking about this more when I told Sean, when Sean and I talked about off the air. My first thought was, why would Brett buy that? Because I'm just going to go buy the core book, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to invest in a starter set and so on. And Sean started talking to me a little bit more about it. I'm like, wait a minute, you know, I actually did do a starter set not that long ago. Actually, twice I did that. I looked for the free stuff on Symbaroum. I looked for the free stuff on Vaesen that Free League put out, and I checked different things and I researched it that way. And then I realized, you know, from my perspective, when I'm looking at a starter set, and this is because I'm an experienced gamer with many years of reading rule books and so on and so forth, I'm looking for very specific things in a game. Like, hey, does Vaesen capture this piece? How does Symbaroum deal with tone and, characters rolling on the dice and so forth? And I found that usually in their free stuff is where I'm like, oh, yeah, it answers that question. Oh, yeah, because that's a piece they're highlighting. When 5th edition came out, And Sean was talking it up to me. I'm like, oh, geez, oh, gosh, I don't know. And he's like, look, man, the core rules are like free online. I'm like, huh, really? So you go out there and there's the core component of it. Now, it doesn't have everything in it. It's a limited scope of what's free. But that was actually pretty good. I read through that after talking to people, looking at that, reading it over. Like, hey, this does sound like a good idea. So I have found that's more Brett style, right? Where I want to look at those components and parts. And I can usually find out what I want to know there. And then I decide if I'm going to buy the core book. What I usually don't do is buy the core book and then like a raft of splat books or everything else that goes with it. But I don't personally go out and say, ooh, that game looks interesting. Drop $20, $30, whatever it is for the starter set and play that. At least I haven't for a very, very long time. And, Sean, I think one of the reasons is that, strike that. I'm going to have to go back and back out what I just said. I think the reason I'm not buying them, though, is because most of the starter sets I look at, I'm like, oh, I see a D&D starter set in the store. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Hope that's good. Hope that gets somebody started in the hobby. Good for them. But I don't need that. Yeah, rah. I personally don't need it, but I hope it's a good one. I just realized that Call of Cthulhu 7th edition had that little starter softcover. And I used that and ran in the adventure in the softcover. I used that entire thing, make characters and run it with my kids at one point. So I absolutely did use that, which I have not done in a very long time. I completely forgot about that. But the reason I did was I got it for free. It's I'm a cheap bastard when it comes to starter sets. So, Sean, do you buy starter sets?
Dude. Yeah, I buy starter sets, Brett.
Why?
Because I'm a gamer. That's what you do.
Oh, I see.
I don't buy a ton of them. I can tell you which ones I've bought.
Mm-hmm. Hit me.
D&D starter set, D&D Essentials. The first one, starter set with the Lost Mine, that's a good adventure. A lot of people have touted that as a decent kickoff adventure, pre-gens, get it running.
Mm-hmm.
The rest could be, the rules weren't that great. I have the Star Wars Fantasy Flight games. I think I have all 3 starter sets. Age of Rebellion, Edge of the Empire, and Force and Destiny. And then I have Cyberpunk Red Jumpstart.
Okay.
And I think that might be all that I've bought.
Were any of those bought ahead of, how do I say this? Were you, so for D&D, were you going to did you buy the core books before you bought the starter set or vice versa?
I did vice versa. I don't think, no, that's not true. Cyberpunk Red I bought first before Cyberpunk Red core was out because it was the only thing that was out. Yes.
But for D&D, you already had the core books, didn't you, before you bought the starter set?
Those are also the exception. I had the core books before I bought the starter set.
So what the hell did you buy the starter set for? That's the question, right?
That is the question.
I'm not telling you that it's a terrible idea. I'm just wondering what you bought it for. Were you doing it because the adventure was supposed to be good?
So I bought Cyberpunk Red Jumpstart because the core book wasn't out. So I wanted to get a taste of it.
If you wanted to play Cyberpunk Red, get a taste of it, that's what you had to do. Absolutely.
Yeah. The other ones I wanted because I thought they would have, the adventures, like the scenarios that they provide, I thought might be interesting. They did not come with GM screens. I think just the scenarios. The starter set for Age of Rebellion came in handy, and I think I might even downloaded them off the internet, the pre-gens. The booklets are very interesting because they really show you how to, here's how many experience points you start with, allocate them to these blocks because you are this archetype. Okay. And then once you were done with the scenario and you got XP awarded by the game master, you would flip the page and it would be time to level up. And then it would say, okay, now you could allocate to these parts, which was kind of a cool walkthrough, though I never used them for that. I did use the pre-gens for con games.
I was just going to say, one of the things I, as I said at the beginning, as usual, like, hey, you have an opinion, right? And then you start thinking about it, you start talking about it, and sometimes that changes. One of the things you said there that captured me was like, okay, so if it's got a really good adventure in it, especially if it's a starting adventure, mine's a Phandelver is more of a starting campaign, right?
Sure.
But even still has plenty of adventure pieces and parts. If nothing else, if you wanted hey, I want to run this game, and I said this about Symbaroum and even Bison, where I'm like, I'm going to run the Symbaroum the first time. I'm going to use the adventure in the back, the starting adventure out of the core book, because I want to make sure I'm quote unquote doing it right, or I'm catching all the right tones. I'm using the rules properly. A well-written starter adventure highlights all those pieces and parts. And that's one of the things I think was nice about Lost Mines of Phandelver. For my son, when he decided to run it, was it hit on the different components, like this type of skill check, this type of fight, this type of thing, right? So it kind of ran him through that. So I could see definitely from even the experienced game master, looking at it saying, well, wait a minute, here's a specific adventure that's written so that I can figure this out. And I found that to be very much the case with the Haunted House in the 7th edition Call of Cthulhu. I've run that before with 5th edition, so I was very familiar with the adventure itself. But one of the reasons I like that adventure is because it has so many different parts of using the character sheet, using all the pieces and investigating stuff and finding clues and tracking things down. It's not ham-fisted, but it's more obvious than some of the other Call of Cthulhu adventures that I've read. Right? It's the directions to go are left, right, or center. It doesn't feel like the myriad of where do you want to go. It's not Master of Nyarlathotep. It's not Horror on the Orient Express. Like, fuck, do we go to Belize, Egypt, or Rome? You could go some of the places, you literally go anywhere on the globe. But in that one it's much more linear, but it's well done. And it's a really good encapsulated one session type of event. You can play that Call of Cthulhu adventure in one evening, which is great. Because if you don't even know if you're going to like the damn thing, or if you like it and your players may not, well, this starter adventure should be pretty quick. So I think that's to tag on one of the things that Mirko had mentioned is that from what makes a good box set, what makes a good starter set. I think a solid intro adventure that highlights the main components of the rules. If your rule has, if your rule set has crazy chases with, cliffhanger, blah, blah, blah. If the chase mechanic is a big thing, well, they goddamn better have a good, decent chase in it where it helps you go through the chase mechanic so that you can learn it and use it with your friends as you're figuring this out. I think that's a key to a good starter set is, and that's why sometimes the free stuff, when I'm going out and I was getting the free play rules by Symbaroum, it doesn't have an adventure in it really. It's just like, hey, here's kind of how this works. But I think from a starter set perspective, that's a good piece. And I love what you're talking about that they did with the Star Wars stuff is that this is how I make a character. It's 90% made,
right?
Plug in some pieces. And now in experience points, 90% done. Here, do the other piece. You get the feel for it. You understand it better and how the numbers, when I'm putting the squares, when I'm putting the checks in the square or whatever it is, what the impact of that is. I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, the other thing, and Angela mentioned this in the chat room as we were kind of talking, was that I think in a starter set, if there is something in it that is of value that you would get out of it, even outside the adventure and the rules or something along those lines, that you might not be able to get anywhere else. For example, and you can get somewhere else, but then maybe the cost of it is half the price of the starter kit. So why not just double up the money, but get more out of it? So for example, the dice that comes with the Fantasy Flight game, Star Wars, they're not cheap and they're proprietary.
Not. Yep.
So it's not like, your D8, D7, or D8, D10, D12, whatever. They got weird symbols on them and you got to buy them, or you can get the app. Well, if you buy a starter kit for, I don't know, I think the Star Wars ones are at a premium because you're paying for the Lucasfilm rights and license.
Yeah.
So they're always going to be expensive, even the books. But if they're a $30 starter set and the dice are typically 15, well, you get a set of dice in the box. Then you get a starter adventure and some pre-gens that are, a nice glossy paper.
Yep.
Or you get a map. Like I think a couple of them have maps. Like one has a Cantina map. So you could always reuse that, whether you run the adventure that's in the box or not. So I think it's some of those things that come into play. Like, Tales from the Loop starter set or Alien starter set. Great. I don't know if I need that if I've got the core book, but, wait a minute. It's got, this cool map of the universe that's a huge table, 3x4 foot map or something like that where, you could probably get it online maybe, but it's not offered in any other product. And it's in the book, it's in the core book, but it's, in an 8.5, 11.
Not in that format.
Right.
The other thing that I think makes a good starter set are the pre-gens, because whenever I've seen pre-gens in the starter set, the ones I have seen anyway, tend to be geared and curated to have the best possible experience going in. Like anybody can play the character strangely, weirdly, play it like Roger Rabbit or play it more serious, whatever it is you're doing. But these characters are not one-off, quote unquote, odd things, right? They're not edge cases. They're not like ninja pirate dinosaurs, right? They're, right. This is like, hey, in D&D, you need to have these things. This is boom, boom, boom. In Star Wars, this fits this type of adventure. It's scum and villainy. Here you go. This is Edge of the Empire. Here you go. And it helps to set a tone and show you the types of things that can be done. And then in that spirit from pre-gen characters, the other thing for us as GMs is like a good set of pre-gen characters. If you run con games, that shit's gold, man. A good set of pre-gen characters is awesome. I mean, I've gotten to a point now where if I'm going to run an Avalon game and I'm like, hey, do you guys want pre-gen? Sure. I have a raft of them that I have built over the years that I save and I print out or I send in PDF form or whatever. But if you could get some pre-made that fit the adventure, that's awesome. The other thing I liked about the 7th edition Call of Cthulhu one, when I read that one, and I think this is just an improvement on how they're writing overall in games. Vasa and I talked about how awesome it was to read and so forth. And I think people are getting better and better at it. But I have found that the tone of a starter set from do I have to memorize all this stuff? Do I need to know all these things? It hits the big points. That's another component I like. And one of the reasons I like that, even as an experienced game master, is because if I'm going to tell somebody about this new game system, I don't accidentally talk about this weird ass edge case if you happen to be swimming while wearing, a flak vest. Nobody cares about that rule right now. They want to understand how to shoot something. They want to understand how to dodge. They want to understand how to push a roll, how to make my rerolls or whatever, the core mechanics. And it really focuses on those core mechanics, how they're used. And because the starter set is smaller, usually, right, than your larger core book, it's pretty damn easy to find. Flip through 20 pages, 30 pages is faster sometimes than where the hell are the short rest rules in my PHB? Right?
Yeah, that's why I like GM screens. It even gets more condensed.
Yeah, exactly. It just blows that stuff. It just crushes it down. Gets through some of the extra bits, and I think that makes for a good starter set as well. If it's well written, with the. I have an old one, Lord of the Rings. It was Iron Crown Enterprises put it out ages ago. It was kind of a Middle Earth role playing basic kind of approach. It was a simplified version of it. It was interesting, but when you read it, it's neat, but I don't like the condescending, childish tone that they took when they wrote it. That's how it struck me anyway. If you ignore those pieces and parts, the rest of it seems to make sense. And I think a good one is not written like you're talking to a toddler. Right. If you pick this starter set up, great. I'm glad you're here. Let me tell you how cool this is. Let's get right to it. Here's an example. Here's this, an example. And those examples are key. Again, in there, because if I'm going to run this thing and like, okay, so here's how you make an attack. Neat. Okay, that sounds good. Show me an example of these funky dice and how an attack actually happens against 5 stormtroopers and 2 guys and a droid. How does that work? If you don't have that in a very specific examples for each mechanic that you're talking about, you need that illustrative point, because that helps people that really helps, I think that's important.
Yeah, you also get like tokens, maybe pogs, whatever. It's another thing people might like, paper cutouts. One of the things I heard was, and I have never bought it, I heard it stands out on its own, is the Pathfinder Paizo starter set. At least the original Pathfinder, Pathfinder 2, I think there was one, but I imagine it's similar in its approach. But I think when I heard about, I think I heard a podcast or somebody talking about how they put that together, and it was, hey, it was like getting ice cream people to come in, like the tasters, like off the street. Here, we need you to test this. And they were, hey, have you ever played an RPG before? No. Great. Awesome. Have you played? Yeah, 10 years. Great. Come in. And it was like across the board.
Nice.
Lots of different audiences to see if what they put in the books that they provided in the starter set, like, did it make sense? And I think with starter sets specifically, here's the thing, Brett. I think there's a lot of core books out there that just assume that you and I are the ones that are buying them. And they could stand to take some lessons from their starter sets.
It's a very good point. Yeah. Like I said at the top, I'm like, my first gut is, I don't necessarily need it because I'll invest in the core, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
However, man, I think you're right. And the other cool thing with a game like a Paizo game, or I should say Pathfinder, not a Paizo game. That sounds right. Like it's just them. But Pathfinder's an on the grid type of game. You can play Pathfinder Theater of the Mind. I know, I've done it. It's difficult. It takes a lot of work because 5-foot squares matter, movement and so on and so forth. D&D 3035, whatever. It's tough to do that kind of game without a grid.
It's tough to do anything if it's not designed for it, Brett.
Yeah, I know. Whatever.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I know.
Go ahead, man.
I'm a dad of 5 kids. I barely designed to do that. It's hard. It's fucking hard. I know exactly what you're talking about.
But it's the usability pieces that I think
what I'm talking about is in that box set. If they like, hey, look, here's some pogs. Like, here's some cardboard standouts. That was actually a thing in the original in that Lord of the Rings box and my original Middle-earth role-playing game box set. When you got the box set, it had stand-ups in it for the adventure in the back. So, you had trolls and orcs, and you had little cardboard, fold them, stick them in a little plastic foot so they could walk around. They always fell over because the map was bent or whatever, but you got that. And shit, I think actually in the back of my original Star Frontiers box set, they had some of that. And that's a piece where the box sets became, I think one of the reasons starter sets tend to come in boxes, especially for that, because you can put more goodies in it, right? Then you can get a box, put in the dice, you can put in the cardboard cutouts, you can put in some whatever it is you need. And I think that is an interesting.
You could put the crayon in it.
You put the crayon in, so you could color the damn dice, which you had to do from your red box.
Yeah.
And but I like that notion. So from a good starter set perspective, if I were to pick up, my friends are telling me about this Pathfinder game. I think this sounds interesting. And I pick up that starter set going, is this a place for me to start? Is it really, I'm an experienced gamer. Should I just go buy that? God, that's an $80 rule book. Should I buy that? Should I buy the rule book or should I just pick this up? And if I flip that box over and it shows me included dice, I already got dice. Oh, wait a minute. Pogs, map, adventure, pre-gens. Okay. Now you got my attention. Because that's a lot of stuff. And then I start looking at that saying, if I give this to someone, what could they do with it as well? Because I do like to, when my son AJ was getting into it, some of his buddies were, D&D's kind of neat. I ran out and bought a handful of D&D box sets because they would all get dice from it. They'd get the very basic rules. If they enjoyed it enough, they could then run out and do something with it. right? A couple of them did. And some of them like, oh, that's kind of neat, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you know what? It was worth whatever. I can't remember. I got them on sale somewhere, but it was worth it at the time. Made for a really good. I felt comfortable giving this to someone who was interested because it had all the right stuff in it that they could actually play the game effectively. Right.
Yeah, I don't think the D&D starter set was there, but
no, it wasn't. It's not as good as Essentials from what I've heard, and that's that's a shame, quite frankly. You know,
but it's also cheaper. Like I've bought, true. I think the starter set as cheap as $8 or $9 when Amazon has their special, and I've bought, like 10 of those, and then I donate them to Toys for Tots during the holiday. But it's not so okay. And then I think even the next starter set that they're coming out with is even going to be cost more. But I forgot what's going to be in there. Probably going to be a little bit more robust. So every iteration is going to be better, I imagine.
I think it's the value component, right? So when I look at it and the cost goes up, I'm like, oh, geez, then I might as well just buy the core book. Well, hang on a second. We're talking D&D.
Yeah.
That's a $150 investment. Or you might find the books on sale, but it's $3 $50 hardcovers.
Sure.
Right? Even though they should be worth more because we're dumb. But anyway.
That's another topic I hit on this past weekend is because seriously, man, I talked about side tangent. I talked about like textbooks, like your kids' textbooks.
Oh, you and I talked about this before, man. It's great. Not on the show, but we've talked about it offline from here. It's fucking crazy, man. I can buy those books on the shelf behind me, all my AD&D first edition books. I'm still playing those and still getting joy out of those. I paid $15 for one of them, right?
Right.
You fucking kidding me? That's a $50 book today. It should be, when you see this huge freaking tome land on your desk, Dungeon Crawl Classics, that's an $80 book. He doesn't charge enough for it.
Well, not only that, but I think it does. There is more to it than just the price. There really is.
There's
a ton of it. Like it's the value overall in RPGs. It's how much you pay writers and creators and illustrators and artists and publishers and designers. Like it's a whole huge level that people just are
missing. I think people are missing it. They're missing it.
They're missing it, or they don't ever want to understand it.
That's quite possible too.
No. It's kind of like, hey, I like my Nike shoes because I like my tennis shoes because they're not expensive because they're made in China or India.
Yeah, no, I get you.
If they were made stateside,
they cost more.
Yeah, man. So it's like,
yeah, I prefer to be willfully ignorant of certain things.
Exactly.
Yeah. But what I'm talking about here, to hook it back before we go way the hell off,
bring it back.
From a good starter set, the value prop for me is, let's again to the Pathfinder piece or the Star Wars piece. Star Wars requires funky dice. If I got a box set with no funky dice, then I'm like, what the fuck am I buying this for?
Yeah.
Right? I want to get everything I need to play this game. Is my preference, right? It's kind of in a way, if you will, it's like the board game equivalent, right? If you bought Monopoly and it came with everything but the community chess cards, you'd be like, why, what? It was the board, 2 pieces, 1d6, and like 3 hotels. You'd be like, what? Why? Well, you got to buy the rest of it if you really want to play it. It doesn't make sense. I want to be able to play the game and have fun with it. And I think that Paizo's idea of have the pogs, have the pre-gens, have the stuff, I think that's solid. That's very, very solid. And the other piece is that the way I like a good starter set written is like the way the guys, the folks, I should say, who did Vaesen write. As plain English as you can.
That'd be Free League Publishing, and that should be a part of your vocabulary from here on out, Brett.
Sorry about that. But I want it
signed. Free League Publishing shill. Sean.
Nice. But I want it to be very simple. You should be able to go through it and say these are the core mechanics. Again, state what they are plainly. Example. Next one, plainly stated. Example. And I think that's big, because if the starter set reads like stereo instructions, that's a son of a bitch. Nobody wants to deal with that.
Yeah.
If the starter set is basically a short version of the core books, that's where I don't mind looking at the free version of Symbaroum that was out there, or the free version of D&D 5e, because I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'll parse through this. I didn't pay for it, so that's okay. If I got to read through something, it's not necessarily exactly the tone or the writing style or the examples I would want. That's all right. I got it for free, and that's fine. But in a starter set, when I'm paying for it, part of my value prop there is I want it easy to digest. I think that's important, because then if I run it, I play it, I have a good time, and when my friend says, "Ooh, that looks kind of cool," I can lend it to them. That they can bust through the book and say, "Oh yeah, cool, I see how that rule works. It's right there." I shouldn't have to fish through a huge tome to find it.
We should also stipulate that there is a difference between quick start rules and starter sets. Although
absolutely
some starter sets may contain quick start rules. So
yeah.
That's, because you can get the Call of Cthulhu quick start rules out there.
Well, that's what I was talking about.
Yeah.
That's that paperback I used.
But you don't have to buy the starter set to get them.
Correct. What's interesting with the starter set to me, I don't know. So this is, I like where you're going here with the rules, quick start versus. So if I'm going to use the starter set as a one and done, I picked it up, I ran the starter adventure, and I used the pogs, and I used my dice, I read through the rules. Neat. Is that all it's for?
Yeah.
Is it a one and done? And that's where the Lost Mines of Phandelver had a little more meat to it.
Sure.
That's a campaign. That's not a one session. That's multiple sessions to get through that adventure. Right?
Yeah.
The downside is, of course, it's multiple sessions to get through an adventure. What if nobody likes it? Right? So there is a weird balancing act that these companies have to figure out, is like, is this a one and done? And that's where the quick start rules for Call of Cthulhu, I thought, were really well done. I called it a starter set, but it's really quick start, where it doesn't, I just got the book. I didn't get my 2D10 with it. I didn't get anything, right? There's links in, hey, go copy a character sheet, go out here. I had to do some work, right, to print character sheets. Happen to have my own dice, obviously, blah, blah, blah. That one being a one and done adventure, you ran the haunted house. You're probably not going to keep running the same haunted house with your friends over and over again, because that's dumb. Right. The haunted house had seeds for other types of adventures. Like, ooh, this could lead to, it tells you that when you read the adventure, ooh, this could lead to, this could go over here. But that quick start rule doesn't tell me or help me guide me how to build the Call of Cthulhu campaign. How do I build a through line? How do I put this together? And so on and so forth. It doesn't give me more to work with. I don't know, other than the thing in that, the creature and that thing that you're dealing with and those magic things. I don't know anything about the ghouls, the Shoggoth, the moon beasts, the Shaggy, the Shan. I don't know any of that stuff because it's not in the quick start book.
It's not even in the core. Some of it.
Some of it isn't. No.
I mean, they came out with a Cthulhu monster manual, essentially. Yeah. So,
But I don't know. To me, a good starter set, I mean, if I would have both. It would have a quick adventure, get you started. If you like that, here's the rest of the short campaign, right? 4 sessions, 5 sessions. But I think they're supposed to be like a can of soda. When you're done, you're done. There's not much else you can do for it except recycle it or put it on the shelf, because then you're supposed to go out and buy the thing.
Right.
That's where for my money, the red box approach, the Back Me stuff, the basic, expert, companion, masters, immortals, all that. That was neat, where you got the red box, you got your dice, your crayon, had a solo adventure for you, walked you through the rules, levels 1 through 3, just enough monsters to get you going. You could play that box set for a while. And eventually you tap out, like, we're all level 3. We'd like to be level 4, please. Did
it have a dungeon generator in it?
I don't recall.
I think it had the keys to the map, or
it had the keys to the map, and it talked about how to build dungeons. It had some advice in there, so you could build some stuff, and you could go out and buy adventures for it. Oh, there's modules back in the day. You could go grab those, and then when you wanted to go on, if you were having fun, you could go get your expert set, and that would take you levels 4 through whatnot. So that's to me is an interesting approach. I don't think that would necessarily work today, right?
Right.
But it was like it was just, it's an interesting way to do a starter set. And that's a piece to me, I guess, that because that was the first D&D thing I've ever bought was my Red Box. And I read that. The influence on me was, ooh, that's a really good starter set. It had something to get me going. Had some adventure in it. Explained the rules to me. I had my dice. I had my DM's guide. There, thin paperbacks. My player's handbook. That's really cool. Very easy to track through. At least for me, it was. And then had enough that I could build and do some things. And when I'm like, yeah, I have outgrown this, man. I'm ready. I'm ready for what's next. Let's move on. Grab the expert set. I'm like, ooh, overland travel. Ooh, some higher level stuff. Ooh, more spells. More. You could devour, and add. So that's pretty interesting. But I don't think anybody's doing that now. No one I know of, anyway. So I think the starter sets now are meant to be one and done. In most cases, maybe a small campaign, but after the Lost Mines of Phandelver, you're done. That campaign's over. Go get something else. And I think that other than having an entire game line like they did for D&D, I don't think anybody's going to do that again. It just doesn't feel to be. It doesn't feel to me to be the way the hobby rolls now. Matter of fact, I don't know any other. Somebody out there is going to correct me, and I don't know who else did it. Who else took that Beckme approach or the Moldave approach or whatever, the BX setup where it was, there's a basic expert, tick, 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 tick. I don't know anybody else who did that. I mean, Star Frontiers had Star Frontiers. They eventually added Zebulon's Guide as a splat book, and then Nighthawks was for spaceship combat stuff, but it wasn't like an expert version. Although, then again, in the Star Frontiers box set originally, it had a basic rule book, very slimmed down, tighter version, that had the full rule book. So when you bought that box set, you actually had the kind of quick to play one. Rules a little thinner, flimsier, and then the heavier duty full core book. But did you ever played? I know you've played Beckme. But was that anything you ever got into, man? From like a starter perspective, like Red Box and work your way up or anything like that?
No, I think I just got Red Box and stopped. That was it.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't get the whole rainbow.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But I think the one of the reasons that, because it's one and done, to go back to my original kind of concept of why I tend not to pick them up, and I look for the quick start guides, which I'm glad you came to you helped me redefine that, because I should have done that at the beginning. The reason I don't look at some of the starter sets is because I have the gear, right? The quick start rules for a Pathfinder, and they said, hey, you need a grid. Got a grid. You need some minis. Got minis. You need dice. Bucket, right? Okay, cool. You need paper and friends. Got it. I'm rolling. But if you were really new to it, I could see it. Or if it was so nuanced or so specialized, like the Star Wars dice, there's something about that being, this is a unique thing that this game system requires. And it's different enough to me. It would be alien, so it makes it sound like it's this crazy thing, but such a different concept, right? The funky dice. I could see you going, you know what? I'm going to risk it. I'm going to buy the starter box. Yeah, I might like this enough to go buy the core, but I'm going to buy me a starter box just to see if I really do like it, because it'll give me something to play, something to read through, to try. And I do have everything I need to start with. So, all right, yeah, let's do that. But knowing it's a one and done, I'm going to play this. It'll sit on the shelf, never to be used again, and I'll move on.
Yeah.
Anything else, man?
No, dude. I'd be interested to know if what people have bought for starter sets and if they've been good or bad and why.
I'm also interested if it's a good or bad because you actually played it versus you just read it. So, and the reason I say that, not that just written, that sounds overly derogatory and like inflammatory. Did you actually play it to see how good it was? My example, I read the Symbaroum Quick Start stuff. I did not play it. I read it, went, okay, that hooked me. I'm going to go buy me some books. The 7th edition Call of Cthulhu one, I did not buy 7th edition of Call of Cthulhu until I played the Quick Start Guide. Went, okay, no, I like this. This is cool. Done. I'll go buy it. Right. It did its job on me. It made me go spend more money on a rule book. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see what other people have to say about it, man.
Sweet.
Shall we?
Let's get into die roll. 2 to 4 miscellaneous points of gaming and geekery you want to share with you. Got a couple this week. First one is the Trailhead from Discord. The 150 toothless skulls in Mexico. Why is that way off? Crime Scene Cave, our ancient sacrifice victims. There you go. Little plot for you.
I mean, that's a Delta Green Call of Cthulhu game just waiting to happen right there.
Yes. 2012, a citizen alert brought the Mexican police to a cave on the Guatemalan border where a horrific cave sacrifice scene met their eyes. Some 150 skulls and other human skeletal remains lay piled up in the cave in the municipality of Frontera Camalapa in southern Chiapas state.
Jeepers.
There you go.
Fun. Huh.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that to our attention, Trailhead. Darn it. And then the last one I mentioned at the top of the order, gmmastermind.com. There you go.
Oh, the other thing I wanted to make sure I pumped out there was the AMA, Ask Us Anything.
Yes.
That's the show finale. That's episode 384. That'll be June 27th. So I think Sean and I were talking the other day. I think we've got over about 100 so far. Sean's going through and we're not cutting anything, but we're looking at it saying, okay, this question is a lot like this question. Let's see what we can combine because we want to answer as much and everything as we can. So
we need more.
My wife said she sent some in. Did you get some from my wife?
She did. I saw it.
Yeah. All right.
She said something like, how have you put up with my husband for so long without losing your mind?
That's a damn good question. It's a damn good question.
I actually think she might have actually asked that question, honestly.
I wouldn't have asked her to ask that question. And I would, the answer would be, how do you know I haven't lost my mind?
That's right.
That's the answer to that question.
This is the result, Susan.
This is the result.
Go to gamingnbs.com/AMA and you could submit more than one question and we'll go through those on the last episode. And I'm thinking, Brett, we should field stuff from the chat. Like we
Absolutely,
should just, Brett doesn't tune into the chat because if there was, he'd be like,
I would totally zone out. That's the problem. Sean would be like, Brett, hey, you dumb fucker.
I'm reading the chat.
Sorry.
I'm reading the chat, Sean.
Reading chat. This is awesome. You're like, get out of the fucking chat.
I think for the last episode, I think it would behoove folks to show up in person if they can. If they can, obviously.
If they can make it, I think that'd be great.
We can interact with the chat the whole episode, for the most part. And we'll still record it and put it out for audio, but it'll definitely be the interactive piece that I think will be beneficial. So, yeah. So after this episode, 3 more.
Mm-hmm.
What are we talking about in the next one, Brett?
Next one's May 30th, so I've got some time to think about this one.
You do. Yes. So for those that did show up live, in 2 weeks, we are not recording because Brett will be off hunting Paddington in Canada. Actually,
it's Winnie the Pooh, that pantsless
Winnie
bastard.
the Pooh, yes.
That pantsless bastard. Yes. I'm going to take him down.
Yeah, he's a perv.
Who, me or Winnie? Which one are you talking about? What's going on?
Not you. Winnie the Pooh, man. You rolling around with pants on, Brad. I usually
do. Yeah. I usually do.
Anyway,
good God.
But it'll be pushed back to another week. So Brett's got some extra time.
Yep.
We'll put it out there, whatever it is. I know we want to do a self-reflection, whether we're going to combine that with Brett and I don't know, or we're going to do it separately. Who knows? I can't imagine I can come up with that many things I've learned over 7 years to take up an hour.
I can because I don't stop talking. We know this. We've learned this from
Well, that's
years.
true. Hey, Brett, this is your episode. You get to say whatever the hell you want. Oh, man. Just
that's not good.
Hit record and I'll
That's
be
not
right
good for
back.
anyone.
I got to go make dinner.
I'll be back. Text me if you need a soundbite.
So we'll have to figure out what we're going to do. My damn
All
dog
right.
came down here and distracted me.
All right,
Yeah,
man.
all right.
I think we're good.
I think we are good. So, yeah. Well, tune in 3 weeks from now, right? 3 weeks.
Yep, May 30th, 2022.
Yeah. And for the next episode, we'll put it out there on what it is once we figure out so people can be aware of it. That's all I think I have to say. I'm Sean.
And I'm Brett. Good night and good game and all.
This episode of Gaming in BS produced with help from the following BSers: Joe Swick, Old School DM, Tony Sugarloaf Baker, Eric Jeppesen, Andy Hall, Chris Steele, Remy Bilodeau, Jason Hobbs, Mark DeSaka, Mirko Froelich, Pure Mongrel, Brett Pazinski, Brandon Barnes, Eileen Barnes, Dan LaValle, CW Mellencamp, Victor Wyatt, Craig Huber, Roger Braslett, Stefan Dragonspawn, Jared Rasher, Finolf, Ray Otis, Jim Fitzpatrick, Old Scouser Roleplaying, Old Scouser. It's Old Scouser, damn it. Ron Blessing, Curtis Takahashi, Larry Hout, Ron Bishop, Mark Richmond, Chad Gleeman, Craig, Howard Bishop, Corey Welch, Angus, Eric Salzwedel, George Sedgwick, Robert Nemeth, Brian Kurtz, Laramie Wall, Eric Avia, Jeff Seifert, John Kayward, Corey Gonzalez, Niall Diamond, Aaron Relia, Jeff Goad, Aaron Coleman, Rich Wishon, David F. Baylog, Harrigan, Melissa Bashinsky, H.N. Colcago, Eric Tavola, Huskarl, Yorkis Rex, Ghost GM, Mike Hess Jr., Rory Weston, Jim Ingram, Daniel Garrett, Eric Frankhouse Presents, Phil McClory, Adam Grochon, Jay Plata, Ed Nyes, The Duke in Purple, Isaiah Aries Christian, Larry Hollis, Craig Shipman, Todd Sharp, Orcus Dorcas, Chris Shorb, Michael O'Holland, Wayne Peacock, Mike Coleman, Kevin Keneally, Zagrave, Vornak, Farty McButterpants, Andrew Lear, Craig Chunglo, Eric Lunsford, Ty Prunty, Feeling Good Lewis, Ziga Paradzik, John Mahoney, Crystal Eggstad, Zalea, Zwiefer, Hypnocode, Kelly Ness, Tim DeShane, and Jerry Garcia. Hey, thanks, BSers, for sticking with us through thick and thin and until the end. We really appreciate it.
This has been a Litterbox Studio production.